He thought his badge made him untouchable. For years, he used it like a shield, pulling people over, barking orders, and walking away without consequence. But one night, on a quiet road, he stopped the wrong woman. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't breaking any law. Yet in his eyes, she became a target. What he didn't know was that every second of that encounter was about to be recorded, and when the truth came out, his world would shatter. But the real story isn't just about one traffic stop. It's about power, prejudice, and the fight for accountability. He thought the night ended with a ticket. He had no idea it was only the beginning. Adrienne Wallace lived her life with discipline and quiet strength. A decorated officer, a leader who had spent decades serving her country, she was used to responsibility, the kind that meant lives depended on her decisions. Off-duty, though, she was like anyone else. Driving home late, humming to the rhythm of the road, she looked forward to nothing more than a good night's rest. No flashing lights, no confrontations, just silence and the open highway. But on that night, the calm didn't last, because in the shadows, another figure waited. A man with a badge, a man convinced authority meant control. When his path crossed hers, the rules of respect, fairness, and law would be tested in ways he never imagined. She thought it would be just another drive home. He thought it would be just another stop. Both were wrong. What happened next would pull them into a storm neither could walk away from. He thought the day would be ordinary. A quick stop at the corner store, a walk home, nothing unusual. But the way the cashier's eyes lingered told him otherwise. She scanned the line fast, polite smiles for everyone, until it was his turn. Then came the pause, the hesitation, the way her hand hovered above the register as though even touching his money might be dangerous. He swallowed the insult, forced a polite, "Thank you," and stepped outside. But the cold air did nothing to cool the heat in his chest. On the sidewalk, the stares followed him. A group of teenagers laughed as he passed, one of them muttering just loud enough, "Wrong neighborhood!" He tightened his grip on the bag, fighting the urge to turn around, to shout, to ask them what gave them the right. But he kept walking, heart pounding, each step heavier than the last. That's when he noticed the car, a black and white cruiser, creeping down the block, slowing as it drew near. His stomach dropped. He had done nothing, absolutely nothing, but experience had already taught him that nothing didn't matter. The window rolled down, and the officer inside looked him over with the kind of stare that stripped him bare. "Where you headed?" the officer asked. Not friendly, not curious, more like a trap, a test. "Home," he said carefully, his voice steady though his chest was a storm. "Got ID?" The words hit harder than a shove. He reached into his pocket slowly, every movement measured because he knew that one twitch, one misunderstood gesture could end him right there. The officer took the card, studied it for longer than necessary, then handed it back with a smirk. "Be careful around here. Folks don't like strangers. In the neighborhood where he was born, he tried to shake it off, but the night wasn't done with him yet. A few blocks later, he reached the small park where he used to play as a child. The swing set still creaked, the same as it always had. But now, as he cut across the grass, he heard voices, sharp, mocking. "Lost boy?" A group of men stepped out from the shadows, their smiles anything but friendly. One blocked his path, another circled behind. His pulse quickened. He wasn't looking for trouble. He never was. But trouble had a way of finding him. He kept his tone calm. "Just heading home." The tallest of them chuckled. "Not tonight, you're not." The shove came fast, hard enough to stagger him. Laughter followed, cruel and unrelenting. He steadied himself, fists tightening at his sides, the urge to fight rising. But he remembered the cruiser, the officer's smirk. If a fight broke out, the story would be twisted before he even caught his breath. He'd be the aggressor. He'd be the threat. So he backed away, words caught in his throat. But each step only fueled their taunts, louder, harsher, each one cutting deeper than the last. He wanted to scream, to run, to vanish, and then a siren. The same black and white cruiser pulled up, lights flashing. Relief? Not exactly. His gut told him this wouldn't end in protection. The officer stepped out, hand already hovering near his holster. "What's going on here?" Before he could speak, one of the men pointed. "He started it!" Came through here acting like he owned the place. The officer's gaze snapped back to him, cold, suspicious, already believing the lie. His mouth went dry. His heartbeat roared in his ears. "Hands where I can see them." Every instinct screamed that this was the moment everything could break. He lifted his hands slowly, painfully aware of the men smirking behind the officer, knowing they had won before the fight even began. And as the officer stepped closer, hand brushing the weapon at his side, he realized this wasn't just about one night, one officer, one confrontation. This was the weight of generations pressing down on his shoulders. The question was, would he survive it? And in that instant, under flashing lights and mocking laughter, he knew. The next few seconds could decide whether he made it home or never saw home again. The officer's eyes narrowed, cold and unyielding, as he took a step closer. Every instinct screamed danger. He had followed every rule, every instruction, stayed calm, kept his hands visible, but none of it mattered. The badge in front of him wasn't just a symbol, it was a weapon, a tool wielded without question, with decades of unquestioned authority behind it. "Step out of the car," the officer barked. The words hit like a hammer, final and absolute. His chest tightened, lungs burning, as he realized that compliance wouldn't guarantee safety. This wasn't about rules. It was about control. It was about fear disguised as authority, and he was trapped in the crosshairs. Every second dragged like an eternity. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his identification, heart hammering against his ribs. The officer's gaze flicked to the ID, then back, eyes sharp, calculating. There was a pause, just a fraction of a moment, but it felt endless. Time slowed as the weight of the situation pressed down. He wasn't just facing a citation, he was facing a legacy of injustice that had always lingered beneath the surface, waiting to surface the second someone dared challenge the expected order. Then came the movement, a casual, controlled gesture as he turned on his phone and started recording. Nothing flashy, no yelling, no defiance, just proof, evidence, a line in time that would hold the truth steady against a tide of bias. The officer's eyes flicked to the glowing screen, a sliver of uncertainty crossing his face, but he didn't step back. Not yet. He followed the officer's commands, hands high, voice steady even as adrenaline clawed at his chest. The field tests, the inspections, the questions, all performed with precision, without stumble or hesitation. Still, the citation came, written as though his mere presence had been a threat. Every word of that ticket felt like a verdict before trial, a reminder that power could shape reality, and sometimes the rules only applied to some. As he watched the officer return to the cruiser, smirking as though nothing had happened, a flicker of something ignited within him. Anger, resolve, clarity. This moment, terrifying and demeaning as it was, wasn't the end. It was the point where the story would shift, where the quiet strength he carried inside would meet the world's disregard head-on. In that tense, suffocating pause between injustice and action, he understood. The fight wasn't just about this night, this stop, this man. It was about accountability, visibility, and breaking the cycle that had silenced too many before him. The fear still clung, but now it was laced with determination. The night seemed heavier, darker as he slid back into his car, every nerve on edge. But somewhere beneath the dread, a single thought burned bright. He would not let this go unnoticed. Not tonight. Not ever. And as he drove away, ticket in hand, he knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a reckoning that would demand the truth be seen and justice finally answered. He made it home that night, but the relief was bitter, layered with a mix of exhaustion, anger, and disbelief. The ticket in his hand was more than a piece of paper. It was a symbol of a system that had long allowed fear and prejudice to dictate power. Yet beneath the frustration, a quiet determination had taken root. He realized that his compliance, his restraint, and his insistence on documenting the truth had done more than protect him that night. They had set the stage for accountability, for a challenge to the injustice he had faced. In the days that followed, the footage he had recorded became more than evidence. It became a voice for every person who had been made to feel lesser, every person whose rights were ignored, and every person who had been forced to submit silently to authority. The story spread quietly at first, through colleagues, through legal channels, through those who understood that the true fight wasn't just about one man's actions, but about the larger patterns of racial bias that had long gone unchecked. He returned to his life, but nothing felt the same. Simple routines, familiar streets, and quiet nights now carried an awareness he could not shake. The awareness that the world could be dangerous not just because of chance, but because of unchecked power. Yet there was hope in that awareness, a recognition that courage and diligence could expose the truth and demand justice. He had learned that authority is not infallible, and that silence in the face of injustice is a privilege that not everyone can afford. And in that realization lay a profound lesson. Standing up, documenting the truth, and holding people accountable is not an act of anger. It is an act of protection. Protection for yourself, yes, but also for every person who might otherwise have had no voice. That night had shown him the fragility of power, the consequences of bias, and the importance of using one's strength and intellect to confront it. This wasn't just a story about a traffic stop, a badge, or a single encounter. It was a story about generations of assumptions, systemic unfairness, and the courage required to break through it. And it raised a question that resonates far beyond that quiet road. How many people endure these moments in silence, believing resistance is impossible? How many stories are never told because fear is louder than justice? He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for certain. Change begins with witnessing, documenting, and refusing to accept injustice as normal. The night he was stopped was meant to intimidate, to remind him of the boundaries imposed by others, yet it became the night he reclaimed agency, not through confrontation, but through truth. And so, the story lingers, not as a tale of defeat, but as a call to awareness, courage, and action. The question now is not what happened to him, it's what we do next. How many more voices will we lift? How many injustices will we challenge before silence becomes a choice we refuse to make? Because every act of courage, no matter how quiet, echoes far beyond its moment, and the world changes one truth at a time.